think it's the quest for meaning, the quest for goodness, and trying to find what really matters is something that, despite the amount that people talk about it, I think is actually very underrated. I think a lot of people often put it off. Well, I'll think about that later when I have a bit more time. In my own experience, and in the experience of lots of people I know, life gets so much better when you start making those first steps towards contemplating what am I really living for? How can I make my life a life of service to the good?
Alex Norris, welcome to Fulfillment Project. How you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. How are you?
All the way from London. Oh my gosh, I'm doing well. I've been looking forward to this all day. I think it's 9 o'clock for you over there, isn't it? So you've been to work. You've done your service for the church. You've done dinner with your beautiful wife, and now Fulfillment Project time.
Yeah, what's not to love? Great day.
A great, beautiful day, man. So let me give a little overview of you for our beautiful, beautiful listeners, Alex. Alex is the managing editor of Bedrock magazine, just a beautiful quarterly print magazine that launched last year, March 2025. It rediscovers forgotten wisdom from philosophy, literature, history, and the arts to help readers build genuinely fulfilled lives amid the emptiness, anxiety, and consumerism of modernity. And obviously, when I heard about this magazine, Fulfillment Project is my passion. I thought, I got to get a hold of this. And when I did, it was way beyond my expectations. I can't wait to get into it, Alex. Alex is an Oxford Classics graduate. He's a Latin teacher at Trinity Academy in London and the managing editor behind one of the most ambitious and, frankly, aesthetically serious new publications in years. Alex, what did I miss?
No, that all sounds good. I'm not sure I'd have heaped on the praise quite that much, but otherwise all correct.
Well, I would. I've got a family, I've got a job, and I've got a podcast, and I appreciate how much extra it is to have a serious hobby on the side that requires a lot of effort. Number one, how do you find the time?
It did help that I started it before getting married. So I don't think I was quite aware of how little time there would be. And then once I started it, there was no going back. No, I mean, it's the kind of thing that, especially a magazine, we publish quarterly. And so all of the editing, the social media, all of that kind of thing, the reaching out to authors, that can happen at any point in the quarter as long as we do it early enough. So it's just a question of fitting in a few things on my commute in the evenings, at the weekends, and with a team of, there are 3 of us working on it. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely doable.
It's amazing. I mean, most people today, they're sleepwalking through their life. We get one life, they're sleepwalking through it. People are rich, they're connected, they're medicated, they're entertained, and it seems like they're absolutely empty. Why print? I would think if you're trying to connect with today's culture, people say, meet them where they're at. And you kind of went the opposite direction to create this magazine here, which I hold in my nicotine-stained hands, which is truly, I've said it's beautiful, it's aesthetically pleasing, but why create a magazine? I feel like magazines are closing down, newspapers are shutting down, you can't get funding for these things. What was the inspiration for you and your 3 friends to get this going here?
Yes, you're right. I think print is more and more going online. But what we wanted to do with the magazine, I mean, Bedrock, the whole point of Bedrock is we're trying to help people navigate the challenges of modern life, find meaning, purpose, fulfillment in a variety of different ways, kind of through the modern age. And a lot of our the reason behind why we started was we're trying to get back to maybe an older, more contemplative way of doing things that we've lost. So we think something like reading physical things is actually a really good habit to get into. And although it's harder and not quite as convenient as just pulling something up on your phone, we thought it was really worth making a high quality magazine with these print articles that people can just sit down and read without a screen in sight for when they want that moment to reflect a bit more deeply, switch off. That was very much part of our mission. That said, we do have a digital element, a digital option. You can subscribe digitally, and it's much cheaper, obviously, because we don't need to print the thing. But I find it interesting, actually, that the vast majority of our subscribers have chosen to subscribe for the more expensive print version, and I think it kind of shows that there is a sort of lack there. That the people who are looking for that deeper deeper purpose in the challenges, in the sort of rockiness, or everything that you said about sleepwalking through life, those people are looking for physical things that they can treasure and kind of tangible beauty, which is what we're trying to provide, and hopefully to some extent succeeding.
Well, I'd say you are. And the way I practically use it, I'm probably like many people where I try to keep my cell phone in a different room. I don't want it on me because the stats are every 30 seconds, you check your phone. Whether or not there's a notification, you just always, when there's 1 second of downtime, you grab it, you flip it on, you flip through your apps, check for any notifications, anything missed. And when this magazine is sitting on the side table, it's, hey, I'm going to pick up that article where I left off. I can fill in anywhere from a 5-minute gap in time. My son's playing quietly by himself, so I pick it up and read it. Or I've got, yesterday was Sunday, and the boys were gone with my wife for a while. So I read like 5 of the articles in it, and it was really to flip through, to hold something tangibly in your hand. I love Kindle. I love my phone. I love my iPad. I love my computer. But man, there's nothing like holding a piece of printed work in your hands. What was it like when you got your first copy? I mean, you and your buddies planned for this, you thought of it, and then you put out your first edition. What was it like when you got the first one in your hands?
Yeah, it was amazing. It felt like it was actually the week that we received our first copies was also the week that we had our launch event, where we started selling our copies to our subscribers. And in fact, the very first copies we sold in person, because we wanted to make it partly about the community. We invited people to come and subscribe in person before we opened subscriptions online, so that we could just hand out these copies to people. And it was amazing, both personally, kind of holding this thing in your hand and thinking, wow, this is a reality now, having spent a lot of time thinking about it and planning it. And then also being able to share that with others, kind of almost in the same moment, being able to say, like, you take it. Now it's, as soon as you take something that you've made and you hand it over to someone else, now it's their thought processes that are going to be entwined with it, their memories of where they were when they read these articles, and hopefully the impact that they had on their lives. That's the dream. I suppose at the same time, there's always an element of, you get the copy and you think, wow, this is great, but now I know all the stuff I want to do in addition for the next issue, which I kind of think we didn't do as well. But that's always part of the course. But no, it's great to feel like you've produced something like that.
I find the same thing with my Substack, where I'm pushing out articles and reflection guides, and my podcast where I'm doing monologues in these long forms. Every time I listen to one back, I think, oh, I wish I would have done that. I should have done that. I should have prepped like this. I should have done post-production like that, blah, blah, blah. And I think some people can be sterilized by perfection, waiting to make something perfect. And I think just getting started and iterating over time, you get feedback. Now you guys have a lot of readers giving you feedback. You see what it looks like in print. I think you can grow a lot quicker by starting. As my beautiful, sweet mother would say, if you're not moving in your car, you can't change direction. You have to be moving to change direction. And I think she told me that in high school. And I think of it at least once a week on various topics. You know, what if everything goes great, Alex, to your dream world, what does this publication look like in a year from now, 5 years from now?
Amazing question. And that's still a question that we're, as the Bedrock team, grappling with, because we really didn't expect to grow this quickly in the first year of Bedrock. We thought, we'll make something nice, which will hopefully pay for some stuff about, which some friends and family will enjoy reading, and will help them sort of get find that that's something that they were looking for. And actually, it really has got much bigger. We've got much more subscribers than we thought we would. All across the world as well. We recently opened our US branch, which we never thought we'd do. Like, from the very beginning, we were saying we're not going to ship internationally. That would be a stupid thing to do. And now we found it actually works, and we've been able to make it financially viable as well. And we've got lots of US readers, lots of US contributors, also from across Europe, some even from across the world. We've had contributors from Japan, one from Hong Kong who just sent us an article. There are all these different people who seem to have taken Bedrock and run with it, that we now have to think, where do we want to take this? And for the time being, I think the thing that we want to prioritize is just making the actual magazine itself, the physical copy that we print every quarter, as good as it possibly can be in terms of the quality of the articles, the quality of the printing, the publication, the design of it, all that kind of thing, so that our subscribers are getting their money's worth. But in addition to that, we're also looking into a number of options in terms of we've started working with a couple of teachers to draft some courses for schools based on a couple of the articles in Bedrock around virtues and human formation and that sort of thing, like which of these can be made accessible to school children in some way. We've been looking at possibly hosting some kind of conference in the UK at some point in the next year or so, very sort of early days. There are various different things. We sort of got a YouTube channel off the ground. We're still trying to think, what do we want to do with this? It's still in the early stages. There are lots of paths that we could go down. And I suppose you could say the ideal is that we go down all of them, but actually maybe the ideal is that we go down the one which fits Bedrock best, and we still need to work out what that is.
Makes total sense, and you have to protect the mothership, but often I find, like, maybe the magazine is your mothership, or maybe the magazine was the first domino in a series of dominoes to fall, and the mothership is actually something, maybe it's your YouTube channel, maybe it's conferences, maybe it's class, who knows? I just love that you guys are doing it, and I love that you're getting traction from me in America and Japan, Hong Kong, all over Europe, because I think, everyone, hey, if you haven't already gone over to my Substack and signed up for a free or premium membership, why don't you go do that right now? There's so much stuff. Every Monday morning, you get the newest, latest episode, either a long form or a monologue on a big topic by me. Every Wednesday, you get the self-reflection guide, all my notes, all my memos, and so much more. And by signing up, you will get my free book emailed to you in PDF form right now. Thank you so much. People are feeling what I felt when I discovered you guys, which is, we always dream of days gone by, like, oh, how nice would it have been to be alive in the 1950s when things were simpler. People read, people engaged with each other. There was academic discourse, and people leisurely read things that weren't just scrolling, mind-numbing, trying to flip a bottle and land it like so many YouTube shorts, and this called to my heart. So I was so happy to discover it, and I'm so happy to have you on to talk about it. A little shift here. You write about youth anxiety and suicide crisis. So for the listeners, I mean, the magazine goes all over the place. I'm going to talk about an architectural article in a second, but like, nothing's off limits with this magazine, and this is very in the moment. What made you think to go there, Alex? Why talk about youth anxiety and the suicide crisis?
Yeah. Look, we're trying to cover a lot of ground, which some might say is a foolish thing to do. We think actually it's something that is much needed to have this sort of more holistic understanding. When we started, we thought we'll just be a magazine looking at little tidbits from history and art and literature, and it'll all be nice and cozy. And as we started forming that first issue, we sort of realized as a team, the three of us, that we really need to engage with these much deeper questions that are facing people. Especially, I mean, one of our first articles was about the need for forming young men, the crisis that young men are in. There was a report that came out last March, actually, pretty much the same time that this article came out, which is quite fortuitous. We hadn't planned that, but in the UK, one of the biggest political think tanks in London published this big report called the Lost Boys Report, which sort of reported how we, as a society, and this was specifically focused on British society, but I think could be applied to the West more generally, are failing boys in many ways by failing to provide them with real models of what healthy masculinity looks like. And as a result, we all know the consequences. We all know the kind of crimes that young men are committing nowadays. We also know the rates of all kinds of awful things like depression, like anxiety, suicide rates, and so on. And we hope that we can help to have those conversations in a way which isn't just doom and gloom. So that's another thing about Bedrock. We there are so many people pointing out the problems. We want to point out the solutions to some of the problems that society faces, and we want to do that in a way which is not so much macro. This is what the government should do, but we want to think about what can you do in your life to help the people around you, and to help yourself, and to help your family, your community, to flourish as much as you possibly can. That's what we're dealing with, and that's a massive task. But that's why those topics are very much part of what we do.
Holy smokes. Yeah, massive topics. What does to see an Englishman drink tea is just a beautiful sight. I assume that's a tea.
It is, yeah. Good guess.
Not a black coffee like this American is drinking here. What does healthy masculinity look like, Alex?
I think it's all tied in with this idea of virtue. In some ways, you could say healthy masculinity is just being a healthy human being, at least in terms of sort of morally, humanly healthy, rather than sort of the actual physical health side of things. Being a morally healthy human being as a man. And so there are kind of a lot of specifics that are associated with that. But ultimately, it's the same things that make anybody else flourish, which are, the classical virtues. We hear them from Aristotle and Cicero. We hear them from the pages of the Old Testament as well. We look at, prudence, justice, temperance, fortitude. You look at things like generosity. There are all these different kinds of things. But I think the thing that is challenging right now is firstly, a lot of people don't know about these kind of concepts, which is what we're trying to solve. But there's not so much a deeper problem, an additional problem, I'd say, which is that the people who do know about these concepts don't know how to apply them in their lives. So you might have a young man, for example, and I'm a school teacher. I deal with secondary school children. So in the UK, from the ages of 11 to 18, there are lots of boys, for example, and girls have their own challenges, but specifically on boys, a lot of boys who might know that they're supposed to be brave, and that part of being a good man, being a good person in general, is to be a courageous person. And yet, what does it look like to be brave as a 16-year-old boy who you and all your circle of friends are on social media a lot in your spare time, playing lots of video games, maybe going out drinking, maybe going out clubbing, all these different kinds of things. Like, what are the brave decisions that you actually need to make to grow in that virtue when there isn't a war on, or these sort of traditional ways of expressing the virtue of courage? Well, actually, we're here to help you find those little ways of growing in those things. And that applies then across all the virtues for all the people that we write about. But yeah, I think that's maybe just one example.
Hit me with bravery. What's one tangible way when you're talking to your boys at school? How can they be brave in a practical way in today's day and age when it's like the coziest life anyone's ever lived in 20,000 years?
For boys at school specifically, I'd say one big way you can be brave is to stand up to your friends when they are saying or doing things.
Whoa, baby. Go. Sorry, you just nailed me with that one.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the time, again, as a teacher, you deal with a number of different issues, as everybody can imagine. A lot of the time, in some of the situations that develop between young people, which are mostly fairly trivial but can be quite serious, what's missing is someone in the mix who just says, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to speak about that person in this way. We're not going to send that message, or we're not going to, make these poor decisions that are going to impact our lives in these ways. And actually, all it takes often is that one person to say no, and then other people start thinking, oh yeah, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we don't need to do that. I think actually for the courage to say no is one which is often underrated.
Whoa, that brings to mind my godson and nephew, Luke, who was always so admirable in bringing the outsider into the group. I noticed it as he was coming of age in grade school and middle school and high school. And for me, when I was that age, it was so noticeable to me because I was so worried personally about fitting in. I was so anxious and self-concerned that if I was in and someone else was out, it was like, hey, fend for yourself, buddy. I got in here. Now you got to crawl your way in if you're going to get it. But the way Luke extended that olive branch, to me, that's bravery, especially in today's day and age when ego and your persona is everything or seemingly. And to risk that for the good of the other is incredible. I mean, it's the definition of love, to will the good of the other.
Right.
And so that's such a practical example that people face every day. Every day. One I was thinking of for bravery is porn. You feel this desire, and it's so easily accessed. And you could go back in evolutionary history, why boys start feeling the way they do so early on. And now in modern culture, you don't get married until you're early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s in some cases. And it's like, you're asking me to be chaste that whole time? Yes. It takes a brave man to make that decision. And it's not easy. If it was, it wouldn't be brave. And you look at the things that are attacked most, our sexuality has to be one of them. And I would argue those are the most special things in our lives. The things that society tries to tear apart the most are the things we need to uphold as seriously as possible. That might be a little rich for an 11-year-old, but the older people listening might be able to get a grasp on that. Am I crazy there or am I on point?
No, absolutely. And I mean, it's part of the same thing, really. I think that's an example of standing up, but this time you're standing up to yourself. You're saying, I'm not going to indulge myself in thinking about people in a certain way, in following my desires wherever they might lead me, even if I know this is going to lead me to a place which isn't going to make me a better person. I think that sort of courage to sort of have something cross your mind and say no, be that sort of in a group of people, or be that just on your own, and be able to say, no, I know who I am, and this is not who I want. This is not who I want to be. These decisions will not make me the person that I want to become. That is a great example of courage, I think. And that's, if anybody can read Bedrock and make one decision like that, having read one of our articles, we'll have done our job.
So a little bit in opposition to what you just said, sometimes it's not saying no to something, it's saying yes to something else. Having a list of hobbies, a list of productive things, creative things you can do. So when the temptation calls, you have an outlet to redirect as quick, and you're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs trying to kill an hour. I've wondered, I got really into reading after college when I started my professional career, and I always wonder, what if I took advantage of all the thousands of hours I had as a student to read?
Yeah.
Wow. All the books I'm reading now, I probably would have already read, and I could be on to other stuff, but it's like, you got to cover the basics first.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned, sorry, go on.
Well, I guess to bring the two together, I'd say saying no to one thing is often saying yes to something else. To say, no, I will not think of a person in this way is another way of saying, yes, I will think of them in this way instead. And similarly, like kind of your experience. So I'd say the two are kind of bound up with each other, but I completely agree. And I think that's a great point, that you have to have that yes element of something bigger that you're aiming for in order to be able to say no.
I love that. I just love the framing the positive way, because so many people get caught up in the negative, restrictive, push down sense. It's like, we're not restricting or pushing down anything. We're actually freeing you to focus on so many areas of life that will be pushed down if you ignore them because you're just looking internally. You mentioned some other virtues, Alex. I think prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance were the ones I remember. What's the hardest one to practice, do you think?
Oh, good question. Hardest one to practice. The one that feels the hardest on a day-to-day, I think, is certainly temperance, which I think is kind of this. It's sort of self-control when you know that you should go to bed, but you want to just scroll for that extra 5 minutes that turns into an hour and a half. I think that feels the hardest in the moment. I actually think the one that probably is the hardest in terms of the number of decisions you have to make to kind of reach the point where you're able to do it well is prudence. which I think a lot of people have a lot of confidence in their reasoning skills, and they think, oh, I'll be able to sort of tell right from wrong and work out what the right thing to do is actually. But it's something that I feel as I go through life, that the more complicated situations I find myself in, the more I think, gosh, I really have no idea of what the wise thing to do is, and I have to go and consult and really think deeply about things and make sure that I'm gelling up on all this. I think actually prudence is the one that you'll never quite get there, and that's what makes it hard. But it's also so worth striving for at the same time.
Oh, I've come to the conclusion, one of the great synthesis in my mind or crystallizations from this podcast is that perfection is not the ideal. Perfection is the pursuit of the ideal. You never reach the ideal, but if you are pursuing the ideal, that is perfect, because these things are in themselves good, and you can never be completely that thing. Our lives are pendulums swinging back and forth. And it's the pursuit. If I wake up and make a brave effort today at prudence, justice, giving people what they are owed and due, fortitude, which I think is very manly, like having fortitude when times get tough. You go to practice when you don't want to. You wake up early, first alarm goes off, you get up. You do the hardest task first. That's what I think of fortitude, so manly. Man, these things are so rich and so beautiful to frame your life around when you build them up and you kind of shake the dust off of them. They feel kind of old, like Prudence. Mary Prudence sounds like someone from the 1920s.
Yeah,
Mary
yeah.
Prudence. And it's like, no, man. These are great, spectacular truths that have stood the test of time. They've been around since the ancients, since Greece. Is that fair?
Yeah,
And we need to shake the dust off and figure out how to live them in the 21st century.
absolutely. Yeah, I think the virtue of prudence is often translated or sort of talked about in the modern world as wisdom, which I think has more of that kind of timeless appeal to it. But I think there's something also nice about reclaiming the words that have become a bit dusty. You want to sort of actually take something which feels sort of like it's from a bygone era and say, no, what these people were talking about when they were talking about this applies right here, right now as well.
Okay. You went there, so I'm going to go. You went to Oxford. You seem like a very smart man. Do words matter?
Yeah, of course. Words
Why?
are, I guess,
Why
words.
can't they be subjective?
Well, in some way, words are subjective. The words that you use, that's why you as a writer are interesting, because you will write in a way that will never be quite like the way that another person writes. And similarly, as a reader, for example, someone who reads Bedrock, every reader of ours will read an article and take something slightly different from it.
Whoa,
So
great insight. Okay, great nuance. I was pushing you. I didn't expect you to go here. Keep going. Keep going.
so like with that caveat that I think words are very subjective, I think at the same time, every word is trying to point to an objective kind of reality. And if we did not believe that there was some objective reality to point to, there would be no point in trying to communicate to each other. Like if I say to my wife, I love you, I have to believe that there is a you that exists and that there is something called love, which I understand and she understands. And I'm trying to point her to the fact that this thing is what I have for her right now. So whenever we're trying to communicate, we're ultimately gesturing towards the objective. And to say, words don't matter, or you can just lie, you can say something you don't mean. It's not that deep. Actually, is quite a. I think it's a much more. It's a much deeper betrayal of who you are as a person than a lot of people realize. And I certainly noticed this when I started making an effort. I remember growing up, as a schoolboy, I was constantly lying about having not done my homework and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when I started really trying, when I realized, no, lying is bad, this is not making me a good person, I need to try and stop lying. Firstly, you realize how often you do it that you haven't realized, or how often you embellish things. You might not be completely lying, but you're sort of, as people, we're always inclined to make things out to be slightly different than they actually are. And secondly, you realize actually the specific words that I use really change what I'm communicating to someone else in such a way that out of respect for that person, I need to be precise in my language. I don't know if that answers your question.
It only brings up so many more questions. Like, should each person listening learn a new vocab word every day and try to utilize it? How important is vocabulary in life? Like, is it one of those things people should do? And I'm always careful not to should all over myself. But
Yeah.
like, should I learn more vocabulary?
It's useful, and I think it does help in formation as a person. I think there are lots of things. I mean, again, this is another thing that we found from Bedrock. A lot of the articles we have are people encouraging people to do certain things, like take up particular hobbies that they've found have helped them in some way. I think it's important to say there are so many things you can do to help yourself grow, and to help the people around you grow, that I wouldn't be quite as prescriptive as saying, like, this is one thing you cannot not do. However, I do think, and I would say this because I'm a Latin teacher, so vocabulary is my life. I've just come from teaching, 8 hours worth of vocabulary to a bunch of students. But I think the more vocabulary you know, especially with a language that's as rich as English, I think it's actually the language with the biggest range of vocabulary in the world. I might be wrong on that, but I'm fairly sure that's true, at least in terms of the number of individual words for different kind of concepts. You can just be more precise in your language, and you can describe things in a way that is much more appealing and reflects much more accurately what you're experiencing. So, what can I say? If I go out into the street and I say, it's dark, it's grey, it's foggy, it's misty, it's overcast, like all those things kind of mean the same thing, but they all have quite different kind of connotations. If I say it's misty, it's like, oh, it's romantic. If I say it's foggy, it's kind of inconvenient. If I say it's overcast, it's sort of gloomy and spooky. There's a sort of, I don't know, the more vocabulary you use, the more you can actually experience the joy of life. I think it was, who was it? I'm trying to remember who it was, but it was one of these great thinkers who said that the limits of your language, and I'm going to butcher this quote, it's something like the limits of your language are the limits of your experience, because it's only through experiencing things that we can really understand them. Yeah. I'll just leave that there.
I'm chewing on that. I mean, language is so rich, just like olive oil. A quick switch up here, Alex, to my promotion this week. You said rich. I had these olive oil bottles sitting over there. I didn't know when I was going to bring this up, but my man TJ Robinson runs the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club. I've been in it for about 10 years now. And what's crazy, a lot of people use finishing salts now, like nice, beautiful salt. And olive oil can be the same. You can go to the grocery store and buy some olive oil, whatever. The crap was harvested years ago, who knows when. A lot of the therapeutic benefits are gone. But this stuff was pressed in December 2025 in Italy. So this is a month old. This is less than a month old. And that's the specialty of what TJ does, my man TJ. He goes around the world. Different hemispheres are harvesting at different times. He ships it to you every quarter. So you get the freshest olive oil every quarter, which is amazing. And it is different. Whenever people are like, you're crazy, dude, I buy my olive oil for $5. I give them a spoonful of this stuff and they're converted. So anyway, check out Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club. Tell TJ that Andy at Fulfillment Project sent you. And he's not paying me for this. I just love to share things that I love. And olive oil is one of them. All right. So back to you, Alex. That was crazy. What the hell am I doing here? So Alex, everyone says read the ancients. You have people like Jordan Peterson. You have the Stoic writer Ryan Holiday, who I love. They're constantly pumping into us like, read the ancients, read these old works. And most people read a quote or two, maybe read a book, pick up a book. They feel good for a couple hours, maybe a couple weeks while they read the book. And then they go back to doom scrolling. How will Bedrock be the bridge to this ancient wisdom on a more consistent basis than just like a book or a quote or some meme people see on the internet?
Yeah. I think what we're trying to do, and I've been there. So I studied classics. I've read a lot of these ancient books, and I know how hard it is. A lot of these authors are writing in very different language to what we're used to, and very different cultural context. And it's not really it's not something that we can easily access. Um, but it's something that I think is worth reading. And for that reason, rather than, great as it would be to give everyone a sort of 5-star classical education, we know that's not feasible. For that reason, at Bedrock, we take these uh, works of wisdom, really, things that can teach us something about what it means to be human, distill them into the bits that we think that we found most important, most relevant, and try to apply them somehow to people's everyday lives. So one of the criteria for our articles that we try to make sure they include is we want our authors to be specific about how will reading this article change your tomorrow. It's not just another article about
Whoa.
great concept of or philosophical sort of tendency. It's, will you look at the world differently tomorrow after reading this article? And if so, how? And of course, whether people actually do that or not, whether people implement these things into their lives, that's down to the individual reader. But that's what we hope to bring about, is this kind of practical relevance to the modern world without sacrificing any of the depth.
Well, that's a classic struggle people have with self-help books, is they're mostly what-to books, not how-to books. So it sells you on a vision of what you should do without giving you an actual action plan of how to do this thing. And like, one of my great takeaways is this article by Father Dancho on the genius of Gaudi. And tell me the name of that cathedral again. La Familia.
Sagrada Familia.
Yeah. In Spain. Sagrada Familia. So Gaudi is the architect. He started this in the 1800s, and it's still being worked on today. And his humility of being willing to start a project he knew he wasn't going to finish. The author of your article, Dancho, says Gaudi took a couple people into the cathedral to look at it when it was like early stages, and he was describing the beautiful stained glass windows and the beautiful spires that would imitate trees and living things. And they said, let me see if I can find it quickly. It was such a beautiful quote. But to think that neither he nor we would see this marvel with mortal eyes, I believe this sharpened our delight. Between the vision and ourselves, the full gravity of death could be felt. Those who will see with their own eyes the day the marvelous temple shines at dusk, and as if in a forest, might envy the vision of these 4 men who in centuries long past will have mused melancholically in the same spot, but under the night sky without the shelter of any vault. 4 people in the temple, in the cathedral, before there was even a ceiling on it, visualizing what it would look like one day. Talking about us, you and me, Alex, we can go there. I've seen the outside. I've never been inside, actually, because when I went, I was a poor college kid. I couldn't pay the $20 entrance fee. But and he makes another point that Gaudi was humble enough to even say other architects will impress their own vision upon this, and that's part of the beauty of it. I don't have the lone vision. And in my life, so often, especially as someone putting out articles every week and all this content, all these articles, all this collateral podcast, I want to get something done and push it out, because volume in today's day and age, grabbing SEO, having clicks, views, likes, visibility is very important. And he dedicated his whole life to a project that was never even finished. It called me on to slow down and focus on the gravity of what I'm doing, the quality of what I'm doing, to think about the purpose of what I'm doing and reflect on that and be diligent and to be okay with it. The fact is, I'm going to die. And in 2 generations, nobody will remember my name. So how do I want to live with purpose?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why we had this conversation very early on at Bedrock about whether we wanted to be a monthly or a quarterly magazine. once a quarterly in the end for precisely this reason. We thought we don't want to be just pumping out poor quality content. We want to sort of spend loads of time finding the great articles and turn them into a magazine you can really just sit down and mull over. And as a result, we don't have huge numbers of articles, but we have 15 articles an issue. It comes out every quarter. That's about an article a week, really. It's not a lot, but we hope that each article can kind of make that deep impression. And in a way, you could say it's similar to what Gaudi did with his cathedral. Each of our articles isn't really a Bedrock article. It's an article by the author trying to put their case for something that they deeply love and care about to our audience. And we're just here as the conveyors of that, in the way that Gaudi was the sort of bringing together of all of these different strains of artists who would come after him. I think it's a wonderful thing to feel part of something like that.
It's so incredible. And I can vouch as a reader that the articles are not candy. They are meals, and it can take a minute. So, Alex, let's wrap this up here. You went through the Oxford Classics program. You've read a lot of books. What's your favorite book?
Favorite book? Great question. Should we discount the obvious? It's like, let's, aside from the Bible, right?
Okay, yeah.
What's my favorite book? The one that I most enjoyed reading in my studies.
Ooh, yes.
Was like, as in on my syllabus. The one which I most enjoyed reading on my syllabus was actually Plato's Republic. I found that a surprisingly fun read, which I didn't expect, because most of the ancient writers aren't that interesting. Like you try and read Aristotle, he has some great stuff in there, but it takes a lot of unpacking. But Plato, I found, because his writing, both in the Republic and elsewhere, it's a dialogue. It's like a play. There are different characters.
Oh, yeah.
Conversation. Points is quite funny. At points, it's like somebody stands up, makes an amazing speech, and then Socrates just shoots him down in flames and says, well, don't you realize that this one example disproves your whole theory? And it just felt like being a fly in the wall of a conversation between great men, and them dealing with things that felt relevant as well. The very first chapter of the first book, it's called, of the Republic, is a huge debate between a number of different characters about what is justice. And I kid you not, when I read that, I had in mind some people I knew who would be kind of having these kind of discussions at the same time. And some of the points of view put forward of the antagonists to Socrates are still put forward by people today. What is justice? Justice is giving people what they deserve. Or justice is showing kindness to your friends and unkindness to your enemies, or whatever it might be. All the different kind of ideas around justice, which Socrates sort of takes and says, well, but what about this case here? And it sort of it grips you. Sorry, I know that I've gone on for a long time there, but I have to say that the writings of Plato, if you've never sat down and read a little bit of Plato, feel free to sort of dip in and see what you think. I think the Republic is a much better read than people realize.
Okay, that's added to my list. I've never read him. I've read excerpts. What's the book? Is the book of the men in the cave where it's all dark and one of them escapes? Is that in? Is that book?
Yeah, that's about halfway
through. Republic.
Yeah, so Socrates is trying to kind of talk about what is knowledge at that point, and he basically loses everybody. Everybody just says, like, Socrates, this is going way over our heads. So he says, right, okay, let's come up with a few examples. And he comes up with a bunch of different analogies. And the most famous, and the one that's probably the most interesting, is the one of the men in the cave who are tied up, who are seeing the images of shadows. And gradually, as they get untied, they can see the things that are causing the shadows. And then gradually, as they make their way out of the cave, they can see the people who are causing these shadows. And then they come out and they see the beauty of creation and nature, and they're completely blinded. And they spend a long time just looking at the ground, trying to readjust their eyes until they can look up and see the trees. And ultimately they look up and they can look straight at the sun. And it's such a beautiful symbol of what it means to grow in wisdom and ultimately to behold. So the sun stands for what Socrates called the form of the good, goodness itself. You'd be able to contemplate goodness directly. And And this sort of idea of us gradually working through our limitations until we can contemplate goodness is a very, very beautiful image that has resonated throughout the centuries.
So I had a different understanding of it. One of my dear friends who's been on the podcast, Eric Larson, he was a philosophy major in college, perfectly at the same time as I was discovering espresso. So I would just drink espresso and he would tell me about all the philosophy stuff. And I thought only one person escaped from the cave and he was trying to talk everyone out. And he's like, guys, there's so much stuff out here. And they were scared to leave. Did they all eventually end up getting out of the cave?
No. Sorry, you're right. There was one of them. I was kind of using it in the plural. I shouldn't have said that. But the other interesting thing, you're exactly right. He ends up leaving, and then, really interestingly, Plato has him go back into the cave, as you say. And he goes back in and he tries to persuade the guys who are chained up there looking at this wall with this kind of flickering fire casting shadows onto the wall. And he's trying to tell them all these things, all these kind of strange things you're seeing on the wall, they're just echoes of what we can see up there. And none of them believe him. And in fact, they beat him up. They treat him roughly. They said, "Go away, you're crazy.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? This is completely wrong. Look, we can see it. We know there's nothing else." And it's such an interesting sort of portrayal. In a way, a lot of people describe that as or think that's a self-portrait of Socrates. He's trying to describe his own mission in the world.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, and to think, we talked earlier about young boys. What can they do? Young men. You can be brave. And oftentimes they're the person that has a glimpse of knowledge, a glimpse of the true light. And they go back and try and get their friends to come check it out. Because it's like, hey, I experienced peace. I experienced true joy. I experienced fun. I experienced encounter with the living God. And their friends are like, no, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. And they're trying to pull him back into the cave. And they're chained up looking at a shadow when you've seen the real thing. And in all of our lives, I think we can connect the dots to that. I have shivers on my skin, goosebumps right now thinking of that. Great. Yeah. Okay, I got to read the whole thing. Enough with me. I'm the person I just talked about earlier. Like, I've read a lot of excerpts. I've heard a lot from a lot of people. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. Now it's time to get the book and read it. Man, Alex, what final thoughts do you want to leave us with?
Well, of course, read Bedrock. But in addition to that, I think it's the quest for meaning, the quest for goodness, and trying to find what really matters is something that, despite the amount that people talk about it, I think is actually very underrated. I think a lot of people often put it off. Well, I'll think about that later when I have a bit more time. In my own experience, and in the experience of lots of people I know, life gets so much better when you start making those first steps towards contemplating, what am I really living for? How can I make my life a life of service to the good? And that's what I hope Bedrock will help people to do. If that's something you're thinking about, feel free to take a look at Bedrock. But ultimately, Bedrock is only a conduit to all these amazing ideas. Just, start engaging with all this amazing stuff and start thinking about what does it mean for your life. And yeah, I can really affirm it is the greatest adventure. It's not something boring to try to live virtuously, to try to live a flourishing life. It's the most fun you could ever have, and it's the most excitement and romance and adventure you could ever have in your life.
Alex, people are missing it. People are wasting their lives. They're eating dirt off the floor, garbage, as C.S. Lewis would say, when there is a buffet, a beautiful buffet awaiting us. Virtue, knowledge, pursuit of the good and beautiful. Oh my, it's not boring. It's not a school task. It is fun. It is engaging. It is the adventure of a lifetime. My friends, that's what we're trying to do here on Fulfillment Project is point. I love the way you said that. Just point you to the good, the true, and the beautiful so people can incorporate this into their lives and discover it for themselves. Their sphere of influence can be impacted. Their children can be impacted. Their communities can be impacted. They can find purpose in their life in a way they never have before. Anxiety can turn to joy, depression to smiles and gratitude, and life can be great. Life can be great. Oh, Where, of course, we'll link it down below. Where can people find Bedrock? Where can they find you, Alex?
The easiest way of accessing it is just the website, bedrockmagazine.com. We ship now to both the UK and to our US branch, courtesy of our new US distributor. And we've just started shipping to Europe as well, the kind of continent of Europe. So do sign up there, either for print or digital subscriptions, whichever you feel you'd most appreciate. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Any feedback is always much appreciated as well. So yeah, go out there and live a truly great life.
I love it. And we have some New Zealand listeners and Australian listeners. They would just sign up for the digital then, right?
Yeah,
just bedrockmagazine.com and grab the digital piece.
Yes. So unfortunately, we don't quite ship that far yet. However, the way we started shipping to the US was that one lady did just ask us, do you ship to the US? And we said, no, unfortunately, we'd need a distributor who's printing the stuff over there and distributing it over there. And she said, well, I can do that. So if anybody in Australia or New Zealand feels called to that particular thing, and of course taking a share of the profits and so on, please do, or anywhere in the world, if you'd like to distribute Bedrock in your particular area because we don't ship to you, we're very open to that possibility. Just reach out to us. All the contact details are on the website. So we'd love to hear from you, whatever your thoughts are.
Wow. Alex Norris, Fulfillment Project. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Andy. See you.
Everyone, hey, if you haven't already gone over to my Substack and signed up for a free or premium membership, why don't you go do that right now? There's so much stuff. Every Monday morning, you get the latest episode, either a long form or a monologue on a big topic by me. Every Wednesday, you get the self-reflection guide, all my notes, all my memos, and so much more. And by signing up, you will get my free book emailed to you in PDF form right now. Thank you so much.